And that's what we get to do today and as a part of this series. And I'm really happy that you guys are here joining us. I feel like this whole series, it's like your personal empowerment button, right? And it's accessible anytime that you're ready for a change. It doesn't have to be today, but today we are still going to fill your cup and hopefully support some well-needed shifts in your personal and professional life. So if you guys are ready, if you're listening, wherever you're listening, hit a like, hit a share, hit a subscribe, wherever you are, whatever applies to you right now. My name is Amanda Fludd, and I'm a psychotherapist and mindset coach, and I work with women in business to help them get from fair to extraordinary goals so they can leverage their expertise and create endless opportunities. The world is just waiting for your gifts, right? But here's the thing. A lot of us aren't showing up because our trauma is impacting our business, right? It impacts our relationships, our sense of self. It's really that gap between where you are and where you want to be, right? And if you know part of your hesitation in life is related to some of your experiences, y'all can feel free to drop a yes in the chat. That's okay. We're not going to tell on you or anything like that, right? But we want to see where you are. And it's okay to be honest and open in this space, right? And I think if you are able to be honest, applaud yourself, right? Or even if you're thinking about it, applaud yourself, right? If you said yes in your mind, like my trauma is getting in my way, or some of the things that's happened to me is getting in my way, applaud yourself because you're not alone. A lot of us are working hard every day to be present, despite what's going on, despite the everyday things, the big things, the little things, the past things, right? And we're navigating a lot. And I think today is a great space to be in. This topic I think is awesome. I think it's right on time. And we're going to learn how to shift today and how to really get to, that authentic life that you want, right? And joining me today is our guest, Dr. Sarah Williams, and she's joining us to help us get back on track from trauma and have the life that you deserve. So welcome, Dr. Williams.
Hello, thank you so much for having me this evening.
Oh, such a pleasure. It's awesome to have you. If you could please just tell us a little about you and why this work is so important to you.
Well, first and foremost, I am delighted to be here. As I mentioned, I am also a licensed psychotherapist, so it's nice to share a space with my psychotherapy sister, which is very unusual, but it's a nice thing. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be in this space. I am here because I think because of my trauma, which is a very, very much an understatement. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I'm actually a professor turned therapist, which is very unique. That's part of my story, part of my journey. Earned a doctorate in education, experienced significant trauma, which opened up an opportunity for me to look back at some past childhood trauma and events that I had essentially just covered up because I was thinking that as long as you're still eating, living, breathing, face beat, hair done, nails done, that you're good. So as having said that, I'm a licensed therapist. I have a practice. I'm also a clinical supervisor. So I specialize in helping clinical residents become licensed. I'm also an affiliate with the Harvard Medical School McLean Institute of Coaching, so that I also offer coaching, so I get additional training as a result of that affiliation. I'm a mom of twins and trauma survivor. So that's who I am.
Oh, just beautiful and a whole lot of everything, right? And I'm so glad that you are here to share all of those perspectives. And I think we're going to get right to it in terms of trauma and what it is, right? So I think that's a good place to start in case people are not sure. I do a lot of trauma work as well, and I see how it can really stunt our growth. But I think it's important to even understand what that word is because we throw it around loosely too, right? So what is your definition of trauma, or how would you define it?
Well, essentially, for me, I experienced trauma like most of us before we really essentially knew what it was. So through my training, you know, the operational definition of trauma has to do with a distressing event that's life altering, that in some way you experience an incident that is to such a degree that there's an emotional and in some cases a physical impairment as a result of the trauma. And there are different types of trauma. There's acute trauma, there's chronic trauma and there's complex trauma. Acute trauma is that one incident that we have, say we have a car accident, and that was an acute trauma. It happened, it was one incident. We did the incident report with the police and we were at least able to drive home. Chronic trauma is a traumatic experience that happens over a long period of time. Most of our work as psychotherapists, as you know, is we're working a lot with chronic trauma because these are individuals that experience trauma over long periods of time. Say they were a survivor of childhood trauma, abuse, or sexual abuse, and then over time, that pattern of relationships developed as a result of that trauma. So that means they just had a lifelong experience of trauma. And then complex trauma occurs when you just have a multitude of factors. So say, for instance, my work with individuals that live in public housing. These are women that are struggling with economic variables. They become victims of complex trauma because of their housing insecurity. And as a result of the housing insecurity, then they are now vulnerable to be victims of domestic violence, assault, racism, sexism, etc., along with maybe systemic type of traumas that occur as a result of being on welfare. So that's an example of a complex trauma because there are many layers to it. There could be acute trauma going on, a chronic trauma, and then as a result, it becomes complex.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't think we always even think about it that way. So it isn't even necessarily the thing that's happened to you, but it could be the impact of that thing and how it carries on or kind of sprinkles itself onto other areas like relationships and things like that. But then also how you can be potentially exposed to more traumatic experiences just because of blank, right? Because of your economic status or because of the neighborhood you live in, things like that. You're more prone to experience those things, and it can happen to you directly, or it could just be like you've witnessed it or you've heard it, right? As I say, like trauma is contagious, right? It doesn't necessarily have to happen to you directly, but it can definitely still get its grubby little fingers on you, right? When it comes to women, right? How do you see trauma impacting women? And what would you like us to understand that in terms of trauma and loss?
Women process the events of trauma differently, more or less that we internalize the trauma. And oftentimes we try to accept some level of accountability based upon what happened to us because that's what society wants us to believe.
So we take it on and blame ourselves and carry that.
Blame ourselves, and we carry that because we feel we have this larger accountability as being parents, mothers, wives, the backbone of the church, the employee of the month.
Right.
We got
sounds like a setup.
This queen status with this crown, but we're not given an opportunity to lay down, put our head across the lap and maybe cry or have a shoulder to cry on. We're having to shoulder it a lot. I have worked emphatically against the myth of this strong Black woman.
Oh, speak a word, break it down. Tell them something, Dr. Sarah. Okay, because we get it mixed up, girl. We still trying to carry the crown, but there's some stuff happening.
That's right. It allows us to wear it like a badge of courage. It's almost like, please don't tell me I'm strong. Strong has nothing to do. I'm a soft person. I'm the vulnerable person in our population. I'm supposed to be kind of catered to and coddled and taken care of. But you're trying to do this reverse psychology with me by complimenting me for being strong. So meaning as long as I can accept, take, and hold on to anything that society gives me, and I keep going and I ignore my needs, then that gives me a badge of honor. And it should be anything but that. And that's why I work a lot with women entrepreneurs, your higher performing professionals, because we are the ones that are victimized. We are victimized because we're women, because we're Black women, and we often walk in spaces where we don't see very many of us or people that look like us. So that already opens up an opportunity for us to be victimized in that regard as well.
So in the same way, it goes back to this idea of a complex trauma, right? Like society is setting us up to be re-victimized in so many ways. We can't be ourselves, these expectations that set us up to hurt even
Yes.
more, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
these things play out, right? Because you mentioned high-performing women and things like that. So how does that play out in the work that we do and how we show up? How do you kind of see that?
We show up essentially as a mirror image of who we display and then who we should be. They are oftentimes
Two
polar
different
opposites.
things. Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're two different things. We kind of cover up the wounds and we
We're
keep
good at that.
marching on. Yes.
We're good at that. We'll put on some good clothes,
Yes.
some good shoes.
That's right. Retail therapy, you hear that a lot.
Food therapy.
And we get confused about self-care. I hear these and a lot of us say, well, I practiced some self-care today. Okay, what did you do? I went and got my nails done. I went and got my hair done. I got me, a latte. I bought myself something nice to wear. I said, okay. I said, did you see your therapist? Did you talk about your childhood trauma? Did you confront the person that's disrespecting you in your life?
Oh, she's all the way coming for y'all.
Right.
She talking to you.
we have, and over time, and I'm speaking to myself too, you have to teach people how to treat you. We are so focused on being accepted that respect was no longer on the table, which leaves us vulnerable to the trauma. And again, I'm speaking to myself because that was me. If I could hold up a mirror, I would say that was me. I allowed an employer to disrespect me for years because I just wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be part of the team. I wanted to be looked at as an equal, a young Black woman with a PhD. And I just felt like I needed to prove myself. You already proved yourself when you walked across that stage and they handed you that diploma. You don't have to prove anything else.
Big words, hello.
Right. But I didn't see that because my trauma was showing up. And that trauma was that little girl that always believed you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough, nobody likes you. You're never going to be anything. And you need to be willing to accept being tolerated. And once I got to that point of it, I think it's a higher level of esteem. Well, no, I'm not going to just be tolerated because I'm a living being and we are all connected and we're all equals. But that role of higher order that we see in corporations, it perpetuates that belief system too. So a lot of our women that are entrepreneurs that really make it in those companies, they do have a background of trauma and they're storehousing some of those real feelings that they have about themselves by putting a suit on, being the president or vice president, and they're covering it up with job performance, being overly available, and of what they perceive as happiness. And it's the trauma showing up even in that regard as well.
It's such a blurred line, right? Because on one degree you feel like you're doing the right thing. I'm that good employee. I want to show them that I can be X, Y, and Z, or that I am X, Y, and Z, but not realizing how we're feeding some of those things about how we really feel about ourselves and how we should show up and all the other expectations. It's like a whole nother level here, right? So it's like, are you really seeing your trauma? Because apparently it's seeing and telling on you. My God, it's so deep, I guess, and so profound in so many different ways. And I think that's why I love conversations like this, because we get to look at ourselves in a different way, and coming from women that look like us, right? Because we don't always get to do that and see that, right? And I hope that folks can see themselves in the conversation and recognize too that, okay, I might not be the only one, and maybe I have to look at myself just a little bit more different, right? Or differently. But as they're looking at themselves, what tips or strategies can you share with them if this is something that they're dealing with, like how do they navigate this space?
You literally don't want to enable the things that you seek to change. Okay, so if you genuinely want to experience the joy, the peace and harmony that life is there to give you, you must first create an atmosphere where you no longer enable the variables that rob you of those things.
Break that down, girl. We're going somewhere.
That necessarily could relate to a relationship. It could relate to yourself, because you may repeat to yourself what you were told, lies that were told to you, as a way to keep you in a position where you can easily be traumatized or victimized. Having a level of accountability, having authority over your emotional well-being. Just like we take authority over personal space. Most of the time we don't allow strangers to invade our personal space, but we will allow strangers to disrespect our emotional space on a regular basis. So it's that accountability. So those are just, that's the beginning. Sitting down with a trained clinician, psychotherapist, or really good coach to get you started. Not wanting to skip the steps, because if we're high performing, we're used to succeeding at everything. We're not used to regressing.
And we want to get there quickly.
Yes. So it takes time. It might take years to undo all those layers, and really allowing yourself to trust the energy and the space of healing, and just sit down, sister, feel it. Allow yourself to cry. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, and learn the word no. I can't say that enough. No. And that could be to an employer, a partner, relationship, parent, your children. Protect your space.
And that space is like all the expected roles. And I think that's where it gets hard and tricky, because it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be a good parent. I'm supposed to be a good employee, right? So it makes you want to say yes all the time. But maybe it's in those same spaces that we've got to learn to say no, to protect ourselves.
Boundaries, right? Safe boundaries. Oftentimes, when we overextend and we allow our boundaries to be violated, it's not about the other party. We're trying to make ourselves feel good by always being there for other people.
That's a lie. That's like a lie that we tell ourselves, honey.
Yeah. Like, you want cool air, so you bust the car window instead of just rolling it down. I mean, you're still going to get cool air, but it's going to be a violation somewhere at some point if your window's busted on your car.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh my goodness, just so much to think about. My mind goes to, how do you know if you're kind of off track in this area, right? Because it's so subtle how we might show up and over show up for people, or really get into this realm of like people pleasing and whatnot to in a way feel good about ourselves, but it really could be like an extension of our trauma, right? So are there things that just come to mind quickly in terms of how you might know that you're on track? And like this whole conversation really applies to you, in case you don't know already.
Learning to identify our own emotional barometer. We all have limitations.
We do.
We have those things that we do because we enjoy them. And we have those things that we do because we feel like it's expected. So if you feel somewhat like your pulse going up and your heart rate, or you feel like the stress symptoms of an activity you're volunteering for, or a responsibility that's draining you and it's taking more from you and it's not giving anything back. It's like you're pouring from that empty cup. We hear that all the time. A lot of our clients are women entrepreneurs. They're often drained, tired, feeling stressed. And the body will let you know. The body keeps score.
Absolutely. It's speaking to you.
That's right. In trauma, as you are aware, the brain and the brain doesn't recognize a physical trauma from an emotional trauma. It reacts the same way. It seeks healing. If you cut your hand, immediately there's a process of trying to restore and heal that. You get a scab, you want to cover it up. You don't pick the wound because you want it to heal. It's the same when you experience an emotional trauma. The body is trying to heal that. But what we do is we keep picking at it instead of allowing ourselves to have restoration, peace, boundaries, all of the above, space, and really saying, using that no word when necessary. That's how you not pick the emotional scab.
And I feel like that's where you get a little bit of control back, right? Where you start to notice even what you're doing, right? And starting to change that a little bit for yourself, right? So maybe a lot of things have been out of our control in terms of what has happened, but what we do with that now, like that's back in our hands, right? We can start to take control of that again, and get back to a place where we feel whole again, right? And we didn't even touch on the second half of this as I'm thinking about this now in terms of like having that life that you want, right? So maybe I'll ask you just to leave one piece on that. Like, how do we get to that place of, we're coming back from that hurt space? How do we get to that life that we deserve?
That life that we deserve, I had to step back and understand that I do deserve to have peace, joy, and happiness.
Yes.
And let's piggyback on that word control, because if you've ever been victimized or traumatized, then you lost control. So lack of control became a systemic habitual pattern of your life. It was the tapestry, it's in your DNA of not having control. So a lot of times our women entrepreneurs, we overcompensate in areas that we can control, which is our external appearance. And we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to have that true life that we deserve to have, because we think we're in control because of the tangible items, but we don't have emotional control because of what it's doing to us internally. So once we step back and we really just take a good hard look at those pieces of our lives where we think we're loved and we are not, then that is maybe the beginning. But just knowing that we deserve to have it, knowing that you don't have to earn it, it's yours. You just got to grab it.
Okay, so hanging on to that knowing. Oh, I love it. Oh, y'all might have to go back and listen to some of this, because even in those last few sentiments, there was parts that I'm like, like I just want to get up and run around the church, like, right? Just, it's such a beautiful thing when you kind of understand a little bit more about what's happening to you in your experience, and working to get back to that place in a healthy way. Because I love that piece on, especially as entrepreneurs, because we've got to look out for how we may overcompensate as we're embracing the control that we have, right? Because maybe you're just doing too much, right? And it might feel like, okay, I'm doing it because I want to, it's my business, like, women empowered, da da da. But maybe you're actually doing too much because we haven't addressed some of the things that's under there, right? We want to be able to know when to turn things off, when to give ourselves a break, when to ask for help. We don't have to do everything. So the same ways you may have been showing up or over showing up in the workplace when you work for somebody else, even when you work for yourself, you've got to adjust that too, because you can take some of those same patterns into that experience as an entrepreneur. There are a lot of us as entrepreneurs that are killing ourselves out there, and we don't realize that it's because we're responding to our trauma.
Yes, I am just on the heels of almost a 2-year sabbatical as an entrepreneur.
Oh, we took a break.
Because, yeah, you caught me coming back. um, yes, I went into business because I wanted to have more time. I wanted to have more time to do the things I enjoy, more times with my family, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ended up not having any boundaries at all. I just was working all the time, 7 days a week. If anybody asked me to do anything, it was yes. I made that mistake unknowingly because I'm like, it's my business, it's mine, it's what I'm supposed to do. This is what brings me joy. No, I was becoming very resentful of my own creation
Ooh.
because I'm the boss, I'm in control of it, but I'm not in control. And once I really start leveraging the internal power and looking at my emotional barometer and looking at the things I was saying yes to, I started really examining what was your motivation. And that little girl that back in the day that just wanted everybody to accept and love her. So I thought by doing, eventually I would get that love and acceptance that I was seeking. What only thing it led to was just more demands.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an empty well.
That's exactly what was in my head. More demands, that's draining your energy, right?
Yeah.
And it's going out. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Lord Jesus, just good stuff, honey. Oh, my goodness. Oh, man. So listen, if you are listening right now, I want to encourage you to share at least one takeaway in the comments below, because Dr. Williams, you've helped us just kind of flex our healing muscles today, right? And I know I was taking notes, honey. Right? Because a lot of times we hear things and that's all it is. It's words,
Yeah.
right? But we've got to really take it in and understand what's going on. And sometimes that means you got to go back. You got to go back and listen to it. You want to go back and look at your notes. You want to maybe take some of that and even put it up in places as reminders for you, because it's so powerful. Right? Some of it may be even so powerful, you got to sit with it for a little while for it to really kind of marinate and for the meaning to kind of take root in your life. So share that with us today. Some of my takeaways for sure is that, trauma can definitely impede your life. And it can show up in ways that you're not thinking about, right? It could show up in the ways in how you sort of overcompensate for things, where you're super people pleaser, you're the one that's willing to work like 8,000 hours. And sometimes we even wear our ability to do everything as that badge of honor, right? Or that badge of courage, right? But as you pointed out today, that's really taken away from our healing, right? It's taken away from our ability to get what we need, which may be rest and support and things like that. I'm taking away that sometimes we're responding to the messages of society, but those messages about our expectations, especially as women and especially as Black women, could be killing us. Right?
Absolutely.
And it could be that thing that's re-traumatizing us. So we've got to pay attention to that too. And some of the shifts that's important is to try to take away the things that may be causing us harm, right? As much as we can. And then so many things on there in terms of our vulnerability and showing up and boundaries and what we need to say no to. And also what I love about you is your willingness to recognize that it's too much, right? Or I've reached my capacity, and instead of pushing through that, maybe I need to step back and take a break. And I think that's a huge message for entrepreneurs as well, right? So much, so much. So thank you. My cup is filled, honey. So as we are wrapping and departing, what is one last piece of encouragement that you can leave for the women listening today who may be struggling in this area?
Just basically know that you don't have to be anything to anyone, just be. Your authentic self is all you need. Just be.
Gotta let that one sit on your heart.
Yeah, savor that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just be, right? Whew, so many things, so many things. I have to take some deep breaths and inhale and exhale deeply today, right? So magical. So Dr. Williams, where can folks find you? Drop all your social information. I'm gonna put it in the post comment area, all that good stuff, but still let people know where they can find you.
Okay. On Facebook is I am Dr. Sarah Williams, and Instagram is drsarah.w. That's DRSARAH.w. For counseling, coaching, consultation, or to book me, you can send me a text to 877-377-DRSARAW. And my website is drsarahw.org. Had to think for a second.
Okay, you got it. Oh my goodness. So thank you again. And guys, as we're closing out as well, if you can leave one word for us in the comment of how you feel today after this session with Dr. Williams. And then I'll also ask you, Dr. Williams, what's one word that's on your heart today?
One word on my heart today is reality. Reality. That God dropped that on me. It's my new baby that I'm launching. It's Reality Therapy with Dr. Sarah, new television and podcast. And it's a difference because we're used to reality therapy. We know about that. But reality is our life events, the reality of our lives, and how those current events and what we're currently experiencing as sisters. How can we emerge from that?
Oh, she has some magic up her sleeves, y'all. I love it. And I love that word, reality, because maybe we are existing in like a false sense of reality, right? Maybe one we've created to sort of protect ourselves a little bit. But what if we took a look at that? Can we get to our real selves and like imagine how powerful it would be if we tapped into that reality? So I love that word. I'm trying to think of what my word is. Somewhere between love and grounded, right? And I think it's being in spaces and positions like this. And I think when you get to share the space, like with women like yourself, and the amount of I'm going to say power that they have to give. It's such a beautiful thing to really just sort of bear witness to.
Yeah.
And at least for me, it feels good about the work that we do, right? So I'm going to settle on grounded, right? So I look forward to hearing some of the words of the other ladies in the group. Think about it and let that flow. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining us today and for listening. Please make sure you go find Dr. Williams and like all her stuff and follow her. And we hope that you continue to join us on this series. It's truly been an honor. Thank you again, Dr. Williams.
Thank you for having me.